Hi, welcome to our financial security webinar for this month. We are delighted to have with us Jen Hemphill from Her Money Matters, the podcast, the book. I've had the honor of talking to Jen before. I interviewed her about her book in a book review that I wrote for the AFCPE newsletter. And one of the things that really struck me about Jen was the kind of an interesting approach to financial education and looking at people's individual money stories. And I also really liked, and actually have used, Jen, I should let you know, the concept of having a money buddy. So Jen Hemphill is an accredited financial counselor. She's a military spouse. Her work currently is focusing on particularly on the Latina community. So without further ado, I'm honored to present Jen Hemphill.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Laura. I'm really excited to be here and to share with you just some of my experience, what I have learned throughout the years. And again, this is just from my own experience, which is why I wrote the book. Really to focus on this, I call it the other 60% of financial education. And the reason why I do that is because we're used to hearing the same messages. Save more, spend less, and get out of debt. When it comes to financial education, it boils down to those things. But I noticed in my own experience that it was so much more than that. So here is a little bit about me. I host, it used to be called actually, Laura, the Her Money Matters podcast. And since I shifted gears to focus more on the Latina community, the podcast is now called the Her Dinero Matters podcast. It's still mainly in English, but it's a mixed language podcast. So we throw Spanish in there, whatever comes out naturally for us in the course of the conversation. But so I'm a military spouse, as she mentioned, a mother of 2 boys. And I've been in business for myself for about the past 6 years. So I've been in the trenches, building a business and financial education and serving as it was women, professional women. And now I've just really narrowed down my focus to the Latina population. And I've been really honored to have been featured in some nice publications as well. So today we're going to discuss the 3 different types of money stories, and really we're going to see why that is important and how they help you how they impact how we think and manage our money. So that's really a discovery that I've made in my own experience, and we'll get into that today. And we're also going to get into how to integrate money conversations, self-care, money wins more into your classroom. Notice that this is not about saving more, spending less, and getting out of debt, but really some missing components that I feel should be integrated in financial education, which is why I call it what's about the 60%. And we'll get into a little bit the factors you need to consider when doing financial literacy outreach to the Latina population. As a Latina myself, I definitely have some insight in this. All right, so let me tell you how this all got started, why I went into this, why did I discover money stories, or how this happened. So this goes back to the year 2010. My family and I, we were stationed, my husband's Air Force, we were stationed at McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey. And at that time, I had been married with my husband. We were married 10 years. And I was always very diligent about money. I was that person in our marriage that read the financial books. I was the one managing the money, doing the budget, or quote unquote budget. It wasn't a budget at that time. And I noticed 10 years in, had been saving, we were working on getting out of debt, but we were still depleting our emergency funds. We were still in debt. We had been borrowing from our 401k, and it hit me, why hasn't the needle moved for us much, right? And it wasn't like we were in this bad financial situation, but we hadn't progressed like I thought we would. And so it set me on a hunt as to why. why is this happening? Why is this supposedly person that actually at that time I was in the process of getting my AFC. I had, as I mentioned, I had read these finance books. My family, friends always came to me to ask and seek for financial advice. So I had a lot of shame and guilt through this, because how is this person that's supposedly really smart with money stuck in this financial situation? And so I had that aha moment. So this was my first aha moment where I realized that that typical and traditional money advice, as I mentioned, of save more, spend less, and get out of debt was not enough. I had been doing that, yet we were still in debt. We were still depleting our emergency funds, and we had borrowed from our 401k. So I realized that that really wasn't enough. And my second aha moment was on the money stories that really impact how we feel and manage money. And I was realizing at that time, when I really started reflecting, was what thoughts were coming into my head just on a recurring basis. And I realized that those thoughts included, we don't have enough money, we can't afford this. Those were some of those recurring thoughts that were going on in my mind. And I realized that that came from my childhood. So I was born in Colombia, and we moved here when I was about 8 years old. But all throughout my life, I heard from my parents, we don't have the money, we can't afford it. And what ended up happening is I was recycling those thoughts. And so I started realizing that had an impact of how I felt and how I managed money. So just so we're on the same place, let me define the money story. And I've actually had to create this definition myself because it's not in the dictionary, not yet anyways. And so basically the money story, it's the belief about money from experiences or observations that not only shapes our mindset on money, but how we treat it. And I realized that there's 3 different types of money stories. The past, which is what I was realizing at the time, the present, which is what is going on today, and the future money story. And so the past money story is how your upbringing influenced your views about money. So this is a done deal. It can't be changed, but we can change how we treat money starting now. So the first step is really to acknowledge and really understand what your past money story is. And some of you may have a fantastic past money story where it's very abundant, where it's positive, and that's fantastic. But then there's a lot of us who don't, who were brought up in a household where maybe there wasn't a lot of money, or maybe there was limiting thoughts or negative or scarce thoughts about money. So we really have to acknowledge that, but know that we can change those thoughts starting today. The present money story, as it states, is how we presently view money. So if we don't acknowledge our past money story, we that present money story may be that same cycle of the past money story, right? So it repeats itself unless we acknowledge it and change it. And that present money story, it can be either good or bad. It could, if you had a past money story that is fantastic and it was very positive, and you haven't realized it, but it's continued to be your present money story, really no big impact. But if you have a past money story, you don't acknowledge it, and it continues to recycle itself, that may have a negative impact. And that was what was happening with me. I continue to recycle those thoughts of we can't afford this, and this we can't afford this turn into indirectly it contributed to not having that progress that we wanted, in a way where, yes, we were saving money, but then I can't say excuses, but for some reason, those thoughts, I made them come through, right? In the actions that we took with our money. The future money story is not only how you want your life to be, but it's also about how you want to feel about money. Not many people create this story, but not having one will rob you of that vision and deter you from achieving your financial goals. And with these money stories, I always really encourage people to write them. So start with writing down, what was that past money story? What are some memories that you remember that really impacted you? It could be an experience, something that you heard, something that you saw. It could be any of those things. And you just write as much as you can down of what you can. There's no wrong way to do this. It's just making sure that you write these things down, because the more that you write down, the more clarity that you have. So I always encourage people to write your past money story as, what does that look like? What did that look like? And then look at your present money story. Are there any similarities or differences? And then from there, you create your future money story. And again, it's really impactful when you write it down. All right, so here's some new concepts, or I call them new because it's new to a lot of people, but you yourself may be using some of these. Who knows, right? All right, so talking money. This is a big one. We don't talk enough about money. We have a fear about talking money. It's taboo. It brings a lot of angst. It brings a lot of stress. It brings guilt or shame, because we think that talking money has to be about the debt or the bills that didn't get paid, right? But there can be so many other things. It doesn't have to be about those things. That's what we think about, right? When it comes to talking about money. Now, the reality is that talking about money won't make the problems go away, but it will, in getting the skills and actually practicing talking about money, and we'll talk about some ways to do that in a minute, it will help you maneuver through those problems without much difficulty because you have more confidence. That's in the nutshell. So here we go. So what are some benefits? You're going to increase your confidence. You're going to embrace that current situation, whatever it may be, as bad as it may be or not, without any shame. And you're creating a new cycle. And on top of that, you're an inspiration to others, because if others see you talking money, it's just an example that, hey, if she's doing that, if she's talking about money, it's okay for me to talk about money too. So those are just some of the benefits of talking about money. So how can you incorporate this into your classroom? And a way to do that is to have your students create a money talk cheat sheet. And the purpose of the cheat sheet is to have some talking points, not just for the classroom, but when they're out anywhere, to be able to practice talking money with someone. Here are some suggestions for some prompts, and you can be creative. You can have some other prompts. And one is to list your past and recent money stories and the lessons that you learn from them. From there, you can generate some conversations, because maybe you can be talking with a friend and about maybe a past experience and sharing that. That is talking money. That's engaging in that conversation of money. Another prompt is to list money challenges that you had in the past and maybe why they're not a challenge anymore. And you can just list current money challenges, because those are just prompts for a discussion. So if you had some money challenges that you overcame, you can share with someone, a friend or a family member, how you overcame that challenge. And that in turn can help them, because maybe they're facing that same challenge that you're not facing anymore. You can also, another way is to list all the helpful tips you have learned. So there's so many resources out there and that you can just share. So if you list all those helpful tips that you have learned and loved, you can share that with someone. That is having a conversation around money, and it's helpful for them. And another one that I'm big about is listing money wins, and past and current, big or small. Money wins are a fantastic way to really give yourself a boost, to acknowledge the all the fantastic things that we did, because as human beings, we naturally, I don't know about you, but I'm a to-do list person. And we naturally put all these things on this list that we're going to do, the projects, the things that we have to do. And at the end of the day, we mark whatever we got done and we leave the rest. And we focus on, and I'm guilty of this, and I've gotten better over time. We focus on what we didn't get done, right? And that doesn't feel good, instead of focusing on, oh my goodness, I got all these projects, or I got all these tasks done. And the same with money. We focus on what we didn't achieve. Maybe, oh my goodness, we didn't save enough, or we didn't save what we say we were going to save. But yet, maybe you did other things with your money that are a win. So always focus on those money wins. Now let's talk about self-care. And you may be surprised, what in the world does self-care have to do with our finances? So self-care is just defined as the care of self without any medical or other professional consultation. So what does this have to do? Why am I bringing this up? And what does this have to do with our money? So the power of self-care enables you to continue to move forward when the busyness or the overwhelm threatens to derail you from your goals. And a lack of self-care results in your mindset becoming either negative or stagnant with thoughts that are not serving you. So let's take a day of the week that is busy. We're all busy here. And let's say you have a family, you've had a busy day, you get home, and let's say you have kids, the kids are busy, they have sports. Well, now it's, we're living in different times, but let's go back in time with when we weren't in COVID. You're taking them to sports. Maybe they're not driving. You're taking them to sports. Dinner has to be cooked. And you're tired. You're tired and you just don't want to do anything. So scenario A is you're overwhelmed, you're tired, you're just like, we're just going to eat out. Or scenario B in approaching self-care is taking some time out to breathe. A big mantra, if you will, that has helped me tremendously is, if I take the time I need, I get the time I want. And when I get stressed and overwhelmed, I always tend to come back to that phrase or mantra, because it helps me. Because sometimes we feel we don't have enough time in the day, but it's just taking a little bit of that time to take care of yourself. And what it does, it clears your head. And when you're able to clear your head, you're able to make better decisions. So in scenario A, where you just decided, I'm just going to eat out, obviously you're spending money, right? In scenario B, maybe you took time for yourself, maybe you went on a quick walk and it cleared your head, and you realized, you know what, I can make dinner quickly and easily with these 3 things, and we're not spending money. So that's an example, just one example of the power of self-care. Again, it just allows you to relax and clear your head, because when you have all that clutter in your brain, it's hard to think clearly and it's hard to make good financial decisions. So that is really the power of self-care. And here's a classroom activity idea. Again, you can take this, create your own, make it work for you. And it's just to have your students create a top 10 list of self-care activities that they enjoy. Because this is all about creating a list of things that you will do, not just maybe you may not be into yoga. So that might not be a self-care activity that you will do. So it's about creating a list of things that you enjoy and that you will do. All right, money wins. I mentioned money wins a little earlier. Money wins are basically any success, no matter how big or how small you have had with money, whether directly or indirectly. So I mentioned a little bit why we should celebrate money wins, but we'll go into a little bit more. So the benefits are just an addictive feeling of personal triumph. Who doesn't like feeling good? And who doesn't feel like feeling like you achieved something? I hope no one answered, I don't like that. And also with money wins, you're releasing stress while building up energy and motivation. And it gives you a moment to disconnect and reflect, as well as you can become an inspiration of others. For me, money wins, keeping track. I'm big on the writing. I never really was big on writing because I thought I was kind of a little weird, but just keeping a log, whether in a journal of the money wins, is just a fantastic boost. Because if you are having maybe financially, it's been a tough month, but you have this log of these money wins and you take a look, it's an instant boost. You feel better, you're instantly, and you're able to just move on with your life without feeling that doom and gloom that you were feeling before. And the classroom activity is, I call it a brain dump. You can have students create a brain dump of all money wins. Now, this is, the idea is to start this list, but it's always good to add on to this list. Examples of money wins can be from finding some money to being consistent with a budget, to maybe reaching a financial goal or reaching your emergency funds, how much you wanted to have in your emergency fund, to obviously paying debt. It could be also a money win having a conversation with your partner that didn't end in an argument. It could be so many different things. So I hadn't given you some examples of money wins. The other activity that I actually didn't list here, I don't know why, that I like to have my clients do is to create a dream budget. And essentially a dream budget is taking you have your present budget, which is basically with what you make and your current expenses. But your dream budget, you would take those same categories and so forth, maybe add a few, and think about the amount of money you want to be making, and go through those different categories, groceries or travel. How much would that be? In your dreams, how much would that be? And I'd have them do that for each category. And then we compare that dream budget to the present to see how much of a difference it is. And sometimes it's surprising to them that it's not that far off. Sometimes they really go big on dreaming, which is fine. But other times it's like how they want to be living, it's within reach. And that's really what that activity really makes them realize, is how much is going to really take, because they have outlined in these different categories, and food and travel and gifts, or maybe you want to be taking a hip hop class. I don't know, that you're not taking right now. And it also forces you to do some digging as to how much these things cost. So you already have ahead of time, this is how I want my ideal life to look like. And this is where we are now. And this is the tangible dollar amount that we need to make it happen. So it's a nice and fun activity to do, because people are like, a dream budget? What? I did an episode on that. So if you look on my website and you search dream budget in the search bar for the podcast, there's an episode, and there's actually a worksheet as well that goes with it. So let's talk about, now it's called the Latinx community. And actually I saw another derivation to be more inclusive. And I don't remember, I think it was Latin, like E with an, I don't know. There's so many different derivations. I cannot keep up. So we're going to stick with Latinx today. Now, here are some financial literacy considerations, and I'll go into these bullet points. With the Latinx community, you need to understand the subgroup you are speaking to. And what do I mean by that? When you look at the Hispanic or the Latino community, you have the recent immigrants, you have those that have, multi-generations here in the US that already understand the financial system. The recent immigrants, or just first generation, maybe are just starting to understand, but they don't really know, right? You also have, of course, then there's the challenges of being undocumented, right? That's another whole ball game. And there's people like me that have been privileged. I was born in Colombia. My dad's American. I was born an American citizen, and moving to the US, having my dad already know the system made our life easier because we already had someone that understood the financial system here in the US. So you really need to understand the different groups and subgroups and demographics of who you're speaking to really tailor your education and to them. I know there is a workshop that I help co-teach that it's a grant-funded program. It's with University of Maryland and Virginia Tech, called the Together program. And it's a beautiful program where the concept is you have not a financial therapist, but a couples counselor and an accredited financial counselor to co-teach this workshop to help couples, and they do one in Spanish, this is why I'm bringing it up, to help couples have better conversations. So it's building on the communication piece, how to have that effective and great communication as a couple. And then it builds into having a conversation and getting to know each other, their money history, which basically essentially their money stories, and building some basic financial concepts as well. So it's a great, and in that there's what's called the Juntos, which they have a component within that workshop to talk about the immigration experience, to help them navigate a little bit the immigration experience for those that are recent immigrants. So just some thoughts there. Then we also have within the Latino community and other communities as well, as it's not just subject to this community, the unbanked and underbanked. So unbanked meaning there's no bank account. So you're literally using cash for everything, cash or check, or underbanked, where you may have an account, but you're also using the other convenient services such as payday lenders, and so forth. So those convenient services that cost a lot. So you need to understand if they are in that position, because now with COVID, think about unbanked and underbanked. So you're cash mainly, right? And in COVID, what are we doing? We are making these purchases digitally. So if you're forced to make these purchases digitally, what is this group of people that are unbanked or underbanked doing? They are having to buy prepaid cards, which is an extra cost, an extra fee. And so and with already a limited income, right? So there, with this underbanked and unbanked, there is actually, I had the opportunity to do what's called a FinX experience from the Financial Health Network, I think, because they changed names. I think it's the Financial Health Network. And they put on these amazing experiences called the FinX, where you are put into a group, you are given a scenario, and where you are actually an unbanked or underbanked person. So the scenario is you make X amount of money and you go out into the community to really see if you can fulfill these tasks. And it was just an eye-opening experience of how difficult with being a limited income, being unbanked or underbanked, their life was. So if you have the opportunity to have that experience, I don't know. I know they do the consultations and I'm not sure how it's set up. I had the opportunity at a conference that they provided that, but it was just a really eye-opening experience to how difficult and challenging is for someone that is unbanked and underbanked. They're also the organization is also wanting to, with this, help banks to be more customer friendly, in the sense of you go to a bank, think about going to a bank and they attend you, but how clear are their services? Where you go to a payday lender or you go to the shops and they have a menu of services just like maybe a fast food, where it's really easy to grasp, right? So that's like one of their missions, is really to helping banks become more, I don't want to say customer friendly, but really have their services to be maybe not engaging, but attract other customers that they normally wouldn't. So that was a fantastic experience. I cannot speak enough about that FinX experience. If you have the opportunity to look that up and get that at your university, at the extension, I know they do it in different parts of the country. Definitely do it. Fantastic experience. And it'll help you have an understanding of, especially if you're working with the Latino community, a better understanding. And while you're having a better understanding, you can better serve them, for sure. Another aspect of the Latinx community is you have multi-generational households. So you are, that person or that family may not just be managing finances for themselves, but they're actually having to have that limited income to support their parents or an uncle or a cousin or whoever that may be. So you need to have that in consideration, especially if you're working with them or whatnot, to take that into consideration, because their money has to go and be stretched a lot further. Or you have multi-family households. So meaning Latinos are having, because of the limited income, not all Latinos have limited income, but I'm just talking about that subgroup, where you have multiple families in that one household. And so just take that in consideration. Why are there multiple families living in that household? It's because they have that limited income because of the types of jobs that they are able to secure that don't pay much, and they're here trying to make a living. So I wanted to share that with you to just give you some insight. So it's really about really understanding the subgroup that you're working with or trying to serve, which is diverse. In the Latino community, it's diverse in itself. So you have to understand that to really be able to serve them better. I have my website, which you already have. I am available on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn if you want to connect more. I am an open book, literally, if you have questions in terms of the things that the concepts that I teach. I'm more than willing to share, or we can just connect and whatnot, and just have different conversations. So I'm more than willing. I'm very open to helping you and whatever you need. My podcast, I have over 200 episodes, so there's a lot of content there. Some of the episodes are interviews, and some of them are solo episodes. So in some of the solo episodes, I tackle budgeting or money stories, or I tackle a different array of subjects. And then the interviews, they're really more focused on that person and the money story. Always we talk about the money story, and it's interesting how that all ties in to what they're doing today. It has some sort of an impact, and it's always really interesting to see that journey of that person. So definitely you can check out the podcast. Like I said, there's over 200 episodes, and from there you probably can grab and take some concepts that you can apply as you're teaching.